Good evening and welcome to the Capital Improvement and Planning Committee meeting. It is Monday, October 20th, 2025 at 7:33 p.m. We have four of our five voting members present. First order of business is approval of meeting minutes. We do not have those ready for tonight, so we'll skip over that and we'll go right into our department presentation. So if you all give me a minute, I will move a few people over to the panelist mode. Hi, Greg, Becky, and Keith.
Good evening.
How is everyone?
Doing all right?
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. I know this is going to probably be a longer discussion than maybe it has been in the past couple of years, and we do have two new members that you have not worked with yet, at least in their capacity on Capital. I don't know if your paths have crossed in other respects. So we may have to go backwards to go forward on some of these topics as well. So I'll try to figure out the right intervals to interject with questions and all of that. I think from a logistics perspective, who is going to need screen sharing privileges?
Keith.
Okay. All right. So Keith, I'll make you a co-host. And I think from a structure perspective, and then I'll turn it to you, Greg, for any introductory comments from you and your team, is let's focus on Southborough Public first, get through all questions related to K through 8, and then we'll move to the region after that, if that works for all of you. Okay. So Greg, with that, I'll just like we've done in all prior years, if there's any openings or things that you and the school committee have been discussing or want to raise before going into any of the details of the specific proposed projects, I'll give you and your team the floor.
Sure. So I'll begin with a bit of a preamble, and both for pre-K through 8 and the regional. Over the past summer, Keith and the facilities team and central office leadership team has been working on updating key projects that we anticipate happening over the next 5 to 7 years, both pre-K through 8 and at the region. I will share that we have presented a draft of the capital plans to both the Southborough School Committee and the Regional School Committee. So what we'll be presenting to this evening remains in draft form. We hope to get input and feedback from you folks to continue working on fine-tuning and providing the school committee with a capital plan that each of the committees can approve. I will share that we are finding it more difficult to get accurate quotes. We are getting quotes that vendors are basically saying they're good for 3 months. So we are doing an escalation on the quotes we received to try to forecast out, but it's a highly volatile market, which makes long-term planning more difficult. Quotes that we received 3 months ago can change dramatically now. So that's something that we're managing and trying to keep ahead of. But overall, I think that the plans that we'll present this evening reflect some of the key work that we hope to move forward as a town and district. And I would share that, at the center of the pre-K through 8 plan is really around what to move forward as the next school building project. With a failed vote of NERI, school consolidation, the school committee has been having conversations around what's the next move and what does it think the community can support in terms of school buildings. And with that said, I will turn it over to Keith.
Great, thank you. Do any of the members have questions for Greg of what he shared as an opening before I dive into some of the detail?
Seeing no, I'll just add a comment that we've said to all departments is we understand the frustration with getting quotes and them not being eligible for that long of a period. Some are 30 days for what we're seeing with some other departments. So we appreciate you doing some sort of contingency and as you go through your presentation, Keith, if there's any general parameters you've used, that's great. But I think we are going to work with Mark and his team in terms of how we word ultimately what goes before town meeting from a capital budget article to give some flexibility. One department may have savings, one department may not be able to achieve the costing they originally had planned, just to create some flexibility there as well.
Understood.
All right.
All right,
Back to
great.
you, Keith.
Sure. I will jump in and share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the Southborough FY27 capital plan?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you, Jason, for this opportunity. I did have the chance not only to share this document, but also one for the region, and some backup documents for all of the FY27 projects that are not only a priority, but the ones certainly at the top of our list for both school districts. But we'll focus on K-8. This is a very typical way that the K-8 School Committee has us organize our capital plan. It is done by each school. The difference is it's typically forecasted out about 5 years. We did try to extend that where as best we could, but many of the projects that we have are falling within that 1 to 5 year window. I'll start with the Finn School. Right at the top of the list is the continuation of the Finn classroom floor replacement. This is for moisture mitigation efforts at the Finn School, trying to improve the overall environment there and control any wet conditions that have occurred. We did have a significant mold issue back in 2023, and we've done a series of things to make sure that we are maintaining the environment to the best of our ability. And that floor replacement project is an extension of that. The floor itself at Finn, when it was installed in 98, and many of the sections did not have the moisture mitigation needed for a long-term sustained flooring system. And this is just a continuation of that work. So what Greg, myself, and the team have done is decided instead of doing 1 to 2 classrooms a year, which has been our cadence for the last couple of years, we wanted to pull that all together because we know that is a significant priority for the Finn School. I'll move right along to Woodward. So Woodward, it built in 2004, certainly has the least number of major priority projects, but we still have a couple of things that we definitely want to do in the upcoming year. The technology infrastructure and equipment, this is a continuation of last year. We did set aside, I believe it was $30,000 to start the Woodward technology infrastructure and equipment project. This would complete the Woodward School. We were able to get 6 classrooms done, and this would complete the remainder, the delta of that group, so that all classrooms would be outfitted with the same type of display technology, which our IT team has been working on in a number of schools across the district. The second priority for the Woodward School is a security system upgrade. This is something that we have done a lot of work on behind the scenes. One thing that's become clear is that if we were to do any type of security system upgrade, and anything that was small really isn't having that type of impact. So we are working very closely with a series of consultants on a full security system upgrade. This is something that would be across all 10 schools over the course of a few years. And those are plans that we're currently working very closely with those consultants. And in fact, they're doing some visits in the next few months. But our best estimates, like Greg mentioned earlier, would carry that the Woodward School would be about a $300,000 increase to do what we would like to do for the Woodward School. We move on to Trotter, probably the top priority. Well, we have 2 probably major priorities for this plan. One is the Trotter roof. We were very fortunate to be accepted into the MSBA's accelerated repair program for the Trotter roof. We are actually well into the schematic and feasibility of that roof plan. We do anticipate getting some solid cost estimates on that within the next couple of weeks. I'm hopeful. but our best guess is that it is going to range around 5.8 million. This is roughly what we were able to get from our roofing consultants about a year ago, I believe, maybe a little longer than that, in preparation for the MSBA process. So that's the number that we carry for the Trotter roof, and certainly that's a priority project for the district. The next layer is very similar to what we talked about at the Woodward School, the technology, infrastructure, and equipment. Trotter did not get any of these improvements last year, so this would be the first year that Trotter would be included on this. And fortunately, we'd like to put that all together, and 180,000 would carry us to make sure we have the same type of display technology in the Woodward School and then at the Trotter School. That would carry us through. And then likewise to Woodward, we also identify Trotter's security system upgrades as a necessity for FY27. And like Woodward, the 500,000 is roughly what we'd be able to carry to do some pretty significant updates to the Trotter system and align that with that of Woodward, so it is on the same platform for functionality and usability. So that's something that, like I mentioned, we are getting greater detail on in the next couple of weeks. And lastly, NERI is back on to our capital plan. As has been mentioned, a lot of the NERI projects had been deferred for a more substantial project to be completed. We're reintroducing some of those with this. Right at the top of the list is the roof replacement. We have identified that as a very top priority for the K8 system. We have had to do some significant repairs in the last 6 months and have been working with a roof consultant for a very long time. And essentially, it's been deemed that this roof is no longer sustainable with the basic type of repairs that we would do, and that a full replacement is required for the roofing system at the NERI school, which would have been obviously part of a new project if it had gone in that direction. And the second, and this is where a lot of conversation is happening at the school committee level, is deciding what are our next steps for the NERI building and what the options are to consider. You're obviously working very closely with the town, but the committee did want to earmark $500,000 here so that we were identifying that as a need in the upcoming year to look at more feasibility and a cost of full renovation for the NERI building. I know that was very quick, and I'm happy to go back as far and as much detail as you need, because I'm sure some of these projects are new to the group.
I think that thank you for that, Keith. And
Well,
obviously, there's probably a lot of new things on here, given kind of the change in direction based on the town meeting vote.
Hmm.
So, what I'm going to probably do first is actually collapse our next agenda item into this, just to level set the committee on where that successor committee landed. And Steve was obviously the representative from Capital on that as well. So just understand where that work landed, and from the school administration's perspective, whose court is the ball in from a decision on 2 elementary schools, 3 elementary schools, etc. Because then I think that drives the discussion around each of these individual projects at the existing schools. So I don't know, Greg, do you want to start on that, and then we'll
Sure,
go from there?
I can start and speak on behalf of the school committee. So the school committee, in regards to the pre-K through 8 building committee, has reached out to the select board to have a joint meeting to review the report of the pre-K through 8 building committee and have a conversation around the next steps for the town. I will share that the school committee did look at all the options that were presented, and I think identified options it could support from an educational perspective. There are many options. So one of the things was what they could support is having Woodward serve grades 3 through 4, Trotter serving 5 through 8 with an expansion, Bin supporting pre-K through 2 with an expansion, Woodward serving 3, 4, and again Trotter with an expansion. to house fifth grade. It also supported a renovation of Neary School and keeping it grades 4 and 5. It also supported expanding Finn to serve grades pre-K through 3, and Woodward would be 4 or 5, so it'd be school consolidation. It supported a new 4 grade school, which was what the voters did not support at the town meeting. It supported a new pre-K through 5 building, consolidating to one school. And it also supported, so that those were the options that the school committee supported. It did, of those options, it did identify a preferred option, which was a renovation of Neary and continuing it as a grade 4 and 5. So that is the school committee's preferred option at this time.
Is it preferred from a educational perspective, cost perspective, or just in the interest of making some forward progress?
I think it was preferred from a what can the town support in terms of school buildings. It was clear that cost was a major and significant factor of a school project. So any of the other additions to Finn, additions to Trotter, a new pre-K through 5 building are going to have substantial costs associated. And the school committee ranked costs as one of the highest factors in terms of what it would move forward in terms of making sure that a project could be supported by the town. It does meet many of the educational outcomes that we've identified, but not all. So the district did rank transitions as a high priority in terms of reducing the transitions for students. However, it wasn't a high priority for the community based on the data we saw. And therefore, the district's recommendation was a renovation as a preferred option, and the school committee supported that.
Okay. So there any, and then just a point of clarity is we are no longer partnering with the MSBA in any way on funding for a renovation or new construction or any of those sorts. It's only on the Trotter roof project at this point.
And that is accurate.
Okay. And when is the next cycle open if the community wanted to do something again with the MSBA?
It opens this winter, so January, February. We intend to submit a statement of interest just as part of protocol. And again, getting guidance from the select board and the school committee on what statement of interest it would support. The likelihood of us being invited back in as a town is highly unlikely. Usually takes 2 to 3 years to get back into the queue for a project. And the difference is that when you submit a statement of interest, it's based on you're competing against all those other statements of interests. So what they're seeing and what they've communicated to us is that many more districts have school building needs. The applications for core building programs is increasing significantly across the Commonwealth, and therefore it's a much more competitive environment to get selected to move through their core building program.
Okay. So before we go back to the capital plan and the individual details that Keith presented for the Southborough Public Schools, are there any questions on where we're at related to Neary and overall larger renovation projects?
I do have a couple questions. Gregory, you did present at the last select board. You said you have a report, but you're passing that up to the select board. Has that already been passed to them, and that's not public at this point?
No, so the pre-K through 8 building committee shared a report with the select board, so that is public information that is available.
Okay, is there any way you have so I know that you talked, there was a lot that was talked about.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was like you finally kind of at the very end kind of summed it all up. But so at this point, what are next steps to hear back from the select board? And then it's supposed to go to a town meeting at in the very near future, right?
Yeah, so the plan is, I believe the chair of the school committee reached out to the chair of the select board meeting, and we'll work through Mark on identifying a date for the two boards to have a joint meeting to discuss this topic and come up with a pathway.
And this all has to be done before we submit, again, right, to the SBA? Okay,
Correct.
all right. And so based on all this, there's one thing that jumped out at me is that we have a $45 million, and I know I'm jumping 2 years ahead to 2029, but this is, I think,
It's related. It's related. Keep going.
so there's a $45 million piece that we have to address. So we have to consider all of this at once, and the sooner we do it, the better off we are. But it really ties into the feedback that's going to come from the two committees, collectively coming up with a decision on what we're supposed to move forward for options.
Correct. That is a variable. It could change depending on the option that is preferred by the select board and the school committee.
Just for the record, can you state one more time what the most preferred option was and what the total cost of that would have been?
So the preferred option the school committee selected was a renovation of Neary grades and keeping it as grade 4 and 5 configuration. And the base repair estimates from the original work, Arrow Street was our architect, was $45 million.
Okay, and that's why it's in here. Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions. When you work with the roofing consultant, do they provide like a report that there any kind of write up on what that drives those cost numbers?
Yeah, yes, Mike, they do. So we do work with a roofing consultant that provides us a report as frequently as we would like for the Neary School. I think they've done 4 or 5 over the last 6 years or so, and trying to keep pace with what we were working on. But yeah, they are able to do that, and they do
What
lean against a lot of common trends that are in the region. Our consultant does have their really a beat on what's happening now, and trying to update that as much as possible.
so that is that I I've looked at a report on the current state of the roof, I think, but for the estimate for the replacement, is there like an itemization of that or something like that
Not really. It's usually done by gross square feet of the surface, and then looking at similar applications of other school buildings in Massachusetts, and especially within Metro West.
is it for like a particular type of roof or
Right. Like
what
whether it's a pitched roof or whether it's a flat roof, and then how complicated those systems are is usually what builds back to what his price per square foot works out to being.
but like is there a specific set of assumptions that drives the 5.8 number, or are these are kind of general ballpark?
Those are general, and that 5.8 I believe is about 2
Oh,
years
that's
old.
Trotter, yeah.
But that's
Similar
Trotter as an
for
example. Yep.
yeah. Okay. I had 2 other questions too. Um, so what is the nature of the security system overhaul? What's that? Is there a shortcoming in it today?
Well,
And like,
hang on.
what is the new?
So
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
going to, so we do have the ability to discuss some of the stuff in executive under open meeting law. So
Okay.
um, I think it's an appropriate question, but one that Keith,
Okay.
I'll have you only answer like to how you would present it to town meeting at this point, in terms of if we were on town meeting floor and you're asking for an appropriation at a school, like the general nature of the items.
Absolutely. So one of the things we're trying to do comprehensively across all 10 schools is really make sure we have a uniform system. We have uniform protocols. We have a lot of uniformity amongst how we handle this. But one of the things that we could improve is the technology that backs that up. Each school does have their own system, but a lot of ways the integration of that is really what the standard that's being set. And this would catch us up to more common standards that we're seeing across the Commonwealth and across the nation for that matter. Yeah.
And then the
I wish
last
I
question.
wish I could answer more detail, Mike, because it is
No, that's
pretty
okay. Yeah.
comprehensive.
The last question is that the feasibility study, is that just sort of something you outsource to a consultant, or is that like a lot of different items to that?
It would likely be somewhere where we would get an architect or an engineer, certainly looking at all the extensive work that has been done over the last 5 years, and then carrying that forward. So that number is based on that experience that we've had with some of the other feasibility studies that we've worked on.
Okay. Well, that's it. Thanks.
I'll just
I
make one comment around the feasibility study, that if the path is a renovation, the investment of the $900,000 in feasibility, there's still a lot of work that we could use to move forward. So we still would capitalize on that original feasibility assessment in terms of a potential renovation.
Okay.
And just for stating the obvious, given the amount of time I spent on the Neary project, that 45 million would be a full cost to Southborough. We would not be, even if Greg and team pull a Herculean effort and get back into the MSBA process, that's a 3-year process. So you wouldn't be looking at that article and the timing it sits in the capital plan with any sort of state reimbursement. So any future statement of interest is not even really contemplated on this capital plan, but it would then relate back to this 45 million, if I'm understanding what's been presented in the latest round of thinking.
And Jason, can you go in, or maybe I don't know if you know this answer, but maybe Greg or Keith, if you do go for the town decides, all right, we're going to move forward with the 45 million and it happens on the sooner side, can you still go apply and then have them back pay even if we move forward? No. So it's got to be all before it's commenced because it has to follow certain rules and regs.
Yeah, and I think
Uh,
I'll make one note too. The
Sorry,
Neary
Greg.
Building Committee, in its initial onset before being accepted at MSBA, I think the Capital Planning School Research Subcommittee was deciding on a pathway, whether there was some savings in terms of not moving forward with the MSBA project or moving forward with MSBA. The MSBA process is quite lengthy, and therefore the length it takes to get a project completed, there's actually probably some savings you could see in terms of a town funding itself and actually moving the project at a faster pace.
Well, and I'll bolt on to that, Greg. The other thing we learned is they have specific things that you have to do as part of the scope
Yeah.
that are non-negotiable,
Okay.
as opposed to if you're directing your own path, which some communities that are in our what I'll call our reimbursement category decide to do. You can direct, hey, we don't feel like we have to build this size of a XYZ type of room in the building. But we still have all the knowledge of what the state standards are along the way.
If the Neary roof is replaced, how does that change the urgency of the timeline for the remainder of the renovation? Does that help kick the can a little bit if this town wants to do something like that?
Well, I think so. The roof is urgent.
Yeah.
So just a little bit of history. About 5 or 6 years ago, we knew Neary needed a new roof. We did a short-term repair because we knew we were going to submit a statement of interest through MSBA and hopefully get accepted into the core building program. And therefore, we didn't think it was wise to invest in a new roof at that time. So that's a sense of urgency. What we have learned is that if we do invest in a new roof, it does also create a need to bring the building into compliance. So
Oh, like
yes,
fully code compliant.
yeah, so ADA, and then other
It
other compliance is tripped. This is something that we're learning through MSBA as we move through a couple of these accelerated repair roof projects. So we've gotten definitive answers around a roof would trip ADA and other compliance.
do we know why that is? That's news to me in all the discussions I've heard or
Yeah, we
tuned
were
into.
surprised too because it doesn't change the function of how the building's being used. But Keith, I don't know if you want to share
Sure.
your
So
explanation.
I learned a lot actually not too long ago because we are working on a roof project with the Z School in Northborough, and they're a little bit ahead of Trotter. So what I did learn is that the architect board that takes a look at a lot of this code compliance has been discussing whether or not to build exemptions into their rule, but that has not made its way through They would predict, many of the members that I was talking to would predict that roofs would be exempt. However, that is not on their docket for any time soon. So it goes back to the basic rule, which is the assessed value of the property. And if the value of any project, regardless of whether it's a roof or an HVAC project, it is greater than 30% of the total assessed value, it does trip the ADA code compliance. We were thinking that there might be exemptions to that. We had kind of heard that, and it's simply because it is being discussed, but nothing has been written into the code yet.
What is the assessed value of Neary right now? Is that
It's not a lot. We
it's
this
not?
is this is the
I presume.
exact. I mean, the reason that the latter end of the reasoning that Keith just gave was the one that the Neary Building Committee used in multiple discussions. I believe the last number. I haven't checked the latest assessor's card. We can do it on the fly here, but
I assume it's less than whatever 4.5 divided by 30 is.
Yes.
yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Mike.
I
yeah,
didn't know
it
that. Okay.
was right around the 17-ish last time I remember looking. So we'll pull it up, but uh, big picture is it's just that it's a dollars threshold is the VAT. Like when we were
Yeah.
looking at a roof, I don't know, Greg, 5, 6 years ago, it was a million or two. So we weren't
I think the
anywhere
value
close
of
to.
Neary when we were looking at this several years ago was around 9 million assessed. It was not a lot.
I think the number I gave was Finn. I'll have it in a second here, but yeah,
But
it's
any project that you do for a 9 million assessed evaluation is a low bar to trip anything.
Yeah.
And Neary would certainly has a number of things that would need to be coming into code compliance.
Now, what? So actually, I've heard conflicting like discussions about this. Is it? Someone told me it was just the like the music room, but that would surprise me to hear that because the code, like it predating the ADA code, is
Yeah, so
affects everything, right?
stretch code, so ADA throughout the building, the energy code, asbestos abatement. Basically the building, the age of the building, were built on a code that was,
Yeah.
current in the 1960s and is no longer standard. So we basically would trip most codes, at this point.
You don't have to like widen hallways or something like that.
Actually, the envelope of the building in terms of the width of the hallways is actually, excellent.
Is okay. All
Um,
right.
So it's just the width of doorways, bathrooms, things of that nature in terms of ADA accessibility, bubbler fountains, egress into certain rooms like the band
Yeah.
room.
That's where you might have thought of the music room that has some
Okay.
access issues. That might be why you've
Yeah.
heard of that.
Now, I also heard discussion that there was an asbestos abatement that became immediate, but is there separate funding for that that's outside of that's not part
So,
of this discussion?
so there are two areas that were identified in our 3-year inspection. One was the ceiling in the band room,
It's a music room. Mhm.
the music room, and then we also have a water. It's not a water. Is it a hot water tank,
It's
Keith?
an expansion tank
Yeah.
that was encapsulated that is in our boiler room.
So those are the two immediate needs that were identified by the AHERA inspection, and identified in the report.
Okay. Thanks
One
for all this
second.
information. Yeah.
The total value of the property, both land and building, is 17.6 million. Of that 17.6, 6 million of it is actual land.
Okay. So I think even with it would be very close, but I think we've got to be conservative and assume that the 4.2 is not going to come in at 4.2 million for the Neary roof, and that it would trip compliance because of 30%.
We change the assessed value.
No, that's an assessor question.
Might be worth looking into. The other side is when you have the 4.25, does that include the asbestos for the music room to be cleared? Because if you're messing with the roof, then you're messing with that area. So there's an additional funding that has to be done at the same time.
That is likely true, Mike. Yes. That's one of the things that our consultant did take a peek at, but I don't think is reflective of the 4.25 number.
Do you know what the rough order of magnitude is?
We had done a series of different solutions for that, whether it was encapsulation or removal. I can't remember what that, Greg, do you remember what that estimate was? This was a couple of years back when we looked at it.
I think the removal of the ceiling and replacing in that space was between 20 and 25,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2025. It's comparatively to the order of that.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Right.
The abatement of all asbestos throughout the building is in the magnitude of millions.
Yeah.
Gregory, last question, and this ties into this roof and the other roof and the 45 million in the future, is that the other options that are being presented I know you can't look in a crystal ball, but do you think that from a committee view that if one of them were to go through, that some of this we could walk away from, or is it really looking like this is what we have to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key conversation with the select board and the school committee. I think the pre-K through 8 building committee had some interest in looking at expanding Trotter and expanding Finn as an alternative. And from an educational perspective, if we added space and added a grade level to each of those buildings, it would meet an educational goal. However, I don't have a good sense of the cost or the limitations of sites, or could you create an addition that would actually fit in terms of the bigger architecture of a existing facility?
Okay, Jason, then I look to you for my last question, is that in this situation, we have so much uncertainty coming. What would your recommendation of how we move forward with a budget?
Well, I think there's two things. Like, there's a lot of items on here that have nothing to do, right? Like, just think about the security items, right? Like, those have nothing to do with anything that the town decides to do because those are at buildings that are clearly going to be operating as schools in some fashion, right? Like, regardless of grade configuration, et cetera, I think you can make the argument they're buildings that are going to have students in them, so they should have certain standards that they're held to, whether it be the roof at Trotter or security at Woodward or Trotter, right? Um, I think what capital can do though is if this meeting that's been referenced doesn't get scheduled soon, like put some pressure around that meeting because it then will directly impact because the capital plan is actually flipped upside down this year. It used to be that like in the past couple years, early on it was fire. They had significant needs. Police always is a recurring item. There were some smaller facilities items. Then we got a new DPW superintendent, and a lot of things came to light through that. Schools was a constant though throughout that. There was very little over the last 5 years that capital has been in existence. So this is a new phenomenon because everyone was waiting for kind of that big decision. So I do think there is some urgency around the town making definitive steps forward on something, or for at least if we don't want to take the 50-year view, which was what the Neary Building Committee tried to do, right? Like what's our 5 to 10 year vision? And then it's essentially kicking part of a can down the road, but not the entire can down the road. But I think we got to wait for that, but we can certainly push that we're not going to present a defined capital plan until we have some certainty around that.
Thank you.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in terms of the other questions, does anyone want Keith to bring the sheet back up on the screen, or you just want to go through any specific questions any of you have by building? Any preference on how we do this?
I've got the sheet in front of me, so I don't need to see it on the screen, but
Okay.
In front of me too, so I'm okay.
Okay. So
There is one. It's a big expense. It was the floor replacement. That was the last thing I just wanted to quickly touch upon. Is that There was issues with the flooring before, and then we had mold, and then from a safety standpoint, it needs to be updated.
Yeah, essentially, Mike, one of the things that we've done over the last couple of years is replaced 2 or 3 classrooms at a time, starting with the hallway down in the most saturated area and then working our way down that hall and then the building. But just one thing we've been in discussions about is, it's going to take a very long time if we do it 1 to 2 classrooms at a time. The hope is to really do this, and maybe we get an economy of scale by doing the entire project at once versus just 1 to 2 classrooms at a time. So that's why the committee wanted to front load that and get that project completely done, because we know that's a known issue, and that the floor is definitely a place where we are getting moisture, and that can be eradicated with a floor replacement.
Okay, so in the case where we would Gregory, to if I recall correctly, one of the options was that if we were to extend one of the schools, it was Finn, and in that case, we could, if that did show up as an option, or that was the option, we could bake those costs into those renovations as well too.
So the addition that was added on to Neri in the early 2000, or to Finn, sorry, in the early 2000s. So that section does not need a floor replacement. It's original. That there was a floor replacement at the time, and there was litigation around the floor installer. So that has been a known issue, that there was not a vapor barrier installed in half of the building, and that's part of the building that we're repairing. This is a now issue. We continue to, you know, mitigate moisture in the building. We have a report of the tasks that are required to move forward with. And really, the 2 major projects that we have left, one is the floor, and the second is drainage outside a portion of Finn that's going to need some more extensive work and study.
That's my last question, so at least K through 8 right now.
Just a quick question. This may be dumb, but what is the mechanical system referred to in the school buildings?
HVAC. So what we're forecasting out to FY32 is a lot of these units are coming to end of life, Mike. So what we've seen in some of our other buildings, where we're starting to lose a rooftop unit kind of at a time. So we are thinking that that is going to push us to that point. The reason why that number is as large as it is for the Finn School is we did have a air conditioning study performed at the Woodward School last year, which gave us some good insight into how much it would be, not only just to replace rooftop units in kind, but to move some either conditioned air or air conditioning system into our buildings to make sure we were comfortable throughout the duration, or extending the use of the calendar year.
Okay. I I saw HVAC on different lines, and I assumed that maybe I was thinking of something different, but that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that.
No. I'm happy to clarify.
Keith, on the security systems, obviously, we're gonna have to do some prioritization here.
Yeah.
Are there economies of scale by doing the 2 buildings together?
Probably, Jason. That's one of the things I'm trying to explore right now with our consultants, is just where does that balance fall, so that, I can make a good recommendation, because I know that's going to be part of the conversation.
Okay.
I would imagine so. I would imagine there'd be definitely economies of scale by doing 2 buildings, whether it be the series of 6 months. But maybe there's a different strategy, and we can do different portions of it at a time, which would then be able to scale it out differently and then push it out over a 2 to 3 year period.
Okay. And likely probably a question for Brian, who's not here, but I would imagine a lot of these items, if passed, are going to be bonded from a town perspective. I can't see the town being able to absorb a lot of these from a cash perspective. There's more of a comment. I don't expect the reaction. So is there any other questions on K to 8?
No.
All right. So while we transition to the region, I think there's 2 to-dos that I would ask of the administration and school committee. One, when that meeting gets scheduled, just I think it'd be important for capital to post a quorum notice in the event that we have a quorum that can participate and be active participants in this, to try to tie some of this stuff together. But realize there's a lot broader cost than just broader considerations other than just cost The second would be once the school committee starts to have clarity around direction, I do think we're going to need them to rank this capital plan, just in terms of this we have to do. Like I'll just use Trotter Roof as an example. This we have to do in this year to abide by the MSBA grant. The floor we have to do because of this, and I assume everything is needed this year. Otherwise, you wouldn't be presenting it forward. But just in case we get to that point, it'd be helpful to know.
We can do that.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Greg, any preamble on the region that you haven't already discussed?
No, I think the only thing I would add is that the bond for the renovation of Algonquin Regional High School is paid off next August. Becky,
Yeah, FY27 will be our
FY27.
last payment.
And when is the bond for the athletic complex starting?
FY27, but we are working with Unibank, and we've actually brought Brian into conversations and looking at that first initial payment in FY27 to see if we can get that a little bit lower, and then the following years would be a little bit higher to lessen the impact on the towns.
And the renovation was completed in 2008. It was quite a lengthy renovation. But in terms of systems and aging HVAC and so forth, I think we're in that window where we really need to start investing in some of the key systems to keep Algonquin in great shape. And I'll turn it over to Keith to talk about the plan.
Great, thank you, Greg. So I do have the capital plan for the region before you now. I do believe you also might have shared these materials with the group as well. There's a different design to this plan as opposed to the others. Obviously, it's for the single school, Algonquin Regional High School. And really what we've done in the last couple of years is really refined how this plan is designed and what story it tells. And it is totally in line with what Greg said about the idea that the renovation project to Algonquin was in the early 2000s. A lot of the things that we're seeing from that are coming to end of life, and we have to have a pretty comprehensive plan on replacing some of those items. So the way that this plan in its latest form is designed is a set of priorities, which is in green, and the latest projects that have come up that go out for a 6-year period. The section in pink is where we can utilize some alternative funding sources. We can comment on that a little bit, certainly with Becky's help. And then what the regional school committee wanted to do is really start capturing these long-term projects, to Greg's point, beyond what would be a priority for the upcoming year, but looking and forecasting out. And Mike Gorman, the director of facilities at Algonquin, did a lot of work this summer to dial in some of the numbers that you see here and what exactly it would entail. So that long-term projects area of the plan is something that has been expanded, and I believe will continue to be expanded in the years to come to capture some of those longer-term items. But when we go back to the FY27 priorities, we really have worked closely with the committee to come up with a group of projects, and they would be priority projects that would be under $500,000 to take care of. We have been very supported at the region to start taking care of those projects in the last couple of years, and this is certainly a continuation of that. Out of the top 3 priorities that have been identified through our work so far, all of them have been on prior years' plans. We've moved this forward to make sure it is a priority for FY27. And then what we did beyond the top 3 priorities is we have a series of 3 projects for FY27, one being a brand new one. Unfortunately, the dust collector and the wood shop has failed and is almost beyond repair. That replacement is of $45K. And then to really dig into working on the envelope of the building and preventative maintenance with some caulking. And we can do this in increments because the building is sectioned. We do have updated quotes on that and could take care of it over the next 5 years at about $30K a year. And then, of course, our equipment. This was original piece of equipment to the build in the early 2000s. A great tractor that has served us well, but is at the end of life. So we do have quite a amount of acreage there. We are supported by a grounds contract, but we do need to have lawn equipment to support the work as well. So that's what rounds us up at this point. The committee and the subcommittee have an opportunity to digest this slightly, and we do expect to have an additional meeting with them in the next couple of weeks. So that's why one of Greg's earlier comments about this being in draft form, this was significantly modified from its first round, and this is where we landed at this point. And it was this version of the plan was shared with the committee for the first time last week.
Before I open it to questions, I think it'd be important for Becky to outline how capital comes through from the region and how that's different than what we see
Yeah.
from the public schools.
I was just about to ask that.
So the way that the capital comes through is through an assessment to both of the towns. It is based on the 4-year average enrollment. We look at those numbers and we calculate the percentage over those 4 years. And that is how any capital projects are assessed. I can tell you, it's about a 40% assessment for the town of Southborough, maybe a little bit lower than that. But that comes through on the annual assessment, along with any of the debt assessments that come about through like the athletic complex and the ad reno that we just talked about.
So, Jason, how does this fit into our decision making? Like, I assume things like I don't know, these decisions all have to be made in conjunction with Northborough, or do we just sort of not really have a say on these and we get the assessment and we can plan for it? Like,
So there's a few things there's a few ways to react to that. One, the school committee and school administration could completely ignore us and just present their budget to town meeting which is one number essentially that gets
yeah,
presented to town meeting from a regional school perspective, which includes all of the operations, all of the capital, and then all of the fun math that Becky does in the background to split it between the two towns. That's theoretically how it could work. But what I have seen this administration do is collaborate with us to um, be able to say that they have the support of the CIPC on the regional projects. The same could be said on the Southborough Public, but that's a far more direct impact as
yeah,
opposed to we're paying on average 40-ish%. It can be plus or minus that of any of these total project costs. So that's typically how we've done it. We have not seen a large capital project though, other than the athletic complex since capital's been around. There's been smaller items very similar to the amounts you see on the screen here for FY27 and maybe something similar like what you see for FY28. So I would say the region has not been the focus
yeah.
at any one point in time, other than a comment that I have made in prior years of is the district being aggressive enough with maintaining the building? Right, you heard we just paid off the bond on this. The athletic complex was woefully late in terms of when it actually came to fruition, not because no one was trying, but just because trying to be respectful of different budgetary considerations and in knowing that Northborough and Southborough aren't always in the same financial spot each year, depending on what's going on in each community. So it's we have never jointly met with Northborough's version of the capital planning committee, but I do think we have created a far more transparent process, right? That this meeting's recorded and Greg and the team here, right? There'll be a reference back to what was presented to us. And we've
Yeah.
seen this iterate too between now and town meeting too. Usually things get removed. I haven't seen things get added.
Okay. I was just curious. That makes a lot of sense. Appreciate it.
Jason, I
Yeah,
can
And
no,
I don't
also,
know if
it's
this is, oh,
go
sorry,
ahead,
Greg.
Becky.
Go ahead. Uh, I was just gonna say, for a point of reference, in FY 25, the assessment for both communities was 391 for capital, which translated to about 100 and almost 150,000 for Southborough. And last year it was 175 for the two communities, which was about 68,000. So they are relatively low numbers, but at least they are eating away at some of these capital projects that we have been trying to tackle.
Yeah. Okay.
and the school committee did ask us to create a capital plan in terms of, what can the towns anticipate year over year in terms of a capital assessment. So they selected a number, 400,000 to 500,000. That's the target we've been working with. And to Jason's question earlier, is that enough to kind of keep up with the demands of the facility? The facility's 350,000 square feet, so it's the largest school in of our fleet of 10 schools. And one thing we're trying to not do is have all these projects queue up at once,
Hmm.
but really try to make sure that they're thoughtful in terms of what year they're accomplished in.
Yeah, makes sense.
Becky, I don't know if you have it, an indication of this yet, and if you don't, it's fine. Just come back to us with it. But when the athletic complex gets bonded, and leave FY 27 and the complications of having, kind of the debt rolling off and the debt rolling on, off to the side, are we going to see a lower capital assessment, like a lower, like debt and interest than what we were seeing uh, with the existing project? I.e., is our debt service going down when we swap out the athletic
Yeah,
complex in for the renovation project? Is it even, or are we actually seeing an increase?
You'll see a decrease.
Okay. Is it meaningful or is it rounding?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And Greg, I assume it's then the district's intention that over time we should expect to see some of those larger items that Keith had on the plan slowly creep us back up to the level that we had, I'll call it, gotten used to over the years.
Yeah, that has been our plan. Let the debt assessment for the renovation fall off, and then start, having a larger increase in terms of capital assessment to each of the towns to maintain the facility.
And are we seeing any significant shifts towards Southborough enrollment that are worth noting at this time?
Now we use 10-year projections, so it's in that 40% and plus or minus, a percent. But again, a tenth of a percent does mean something in terms of assessment to each of the towns.
Okay.
But it's probably more stable than it's been in the past 4 years, and we anticipate it to remain stable for the next 5 years than it has been in prior years.
Okay. Other questions from the committee related to the region?
No.
Nothing
All
for
right.
me.
Seeing none. Before I let the school administration go, are there any final questions on the pre-K to 8 building committee and the outcomes there that weren't already discussed earlier, other than Mike Ski's request for like the final report? We'll go pull it from the public packet for the select board.
It, is it? I don't have any questions on it. Is it appropriate to do an executive session at the end to talk about the security system questions?
You have to
Or
post
is
it.
there,
You have
what'd
to
you say?
post it. You have to
Oh, they
actually
posted.
post
Okay.
it. So,
Gotcha. Okay, so
uh,
a different day.
yeah, um, I think we can add that to the administration's to do. Like, once you have a more formalized plan of what you want to do, and especially not to drag you to another meeting, given you're probably in meetings 4 to 5 nights a week already. if there's an opportunity to brief the committee uh, with a little more details, so that we can help to articulate the message for town meeting, that would be helpful.
And I would, and Jason, I can work through you. If it's an executive session, to be a joint executive session between school committee and.
Yeah, I don't want to do a separate one just for us,
Yeah.
is my intention. Okay. All right. Well, we greatly appreciate all of you joining us tonight. And certainly keep us posted if the school committee takes a different direction with any of this, and we'll let you know as we get a better picture of what's going on with the rest of the town budget.
Thank you for the opportunity. And
Thank
if you
you.
have any follow-up questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. All right. So I'm going to skip agenda item 4 and go right to agenda item 5, which is the FY26 capital process timeline and overall update. So since our last meeting 2 weeks ago, we still have not received the DPW budget. I expect it's going to be material. I did speak with Mark in passing last week, and I will be sending a follow-up and enlisting his help to get that because it's really the piece that we need for us to take each of these spreadsheets and combine it into one, right? We have each of the individual departments, but that doesn't mean much in isolation until you kind of look at the bigger picture. So we'll continue to press on that. Our meeting in 2 weeks will be recreation followed by fire. So recreation will go first, then fire chief will come after. Recreation does have some larger items on their plan. They did send some stuff in, so I'll get that uploaded now so that you all have it well in advance. Fire is call it much less than prior years, but they're also driving around a pretty much brand new fleet as well. So I think that will be hopefully a lighter discussion with the fire chief than what we had with his predecessors. And then my intention would be 2 weeks after that DPW is here, and police is already confirmed, but that's usually a quicker discussion and one primarily focused on vehicles. And that will bring us to in and around. My understanding from Mark is that the select board is setting the budget calendar for operational budgets, I believe tomorrow night. So we'll get direction and have guidance on when we're going to have to make our capital presentation. It usually falls right before or right after the holidays time frame. So right before the new year, right after the new year. And there's usually a subsequent follow-up late February, early March, as they start to whittle down uh, and come to a final budget. Any questions on that sequence or process?
Very clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, our next item is committee reorganization. So I know I touched on this briefly last time. Tony's not here, but we do need to move forward with this, in my opinion, at this point, because and we can always change it if someone's not willing to serve in a role or we need to change it during the year. But I think it is important to have a set of protocols in place. So typically, what you do each year, and even though our appointments are all 3 years on a staggered basis, the uh, committee usually elects a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk. The clerk's main responsibility is to make sure the minutes get done. It doesn't necessarily mean that the clerk does the minutes by themselves. So whether it be through a committee member preparing the minutes, or if we're able to successfully enlist assistance from an employee of the town, the goal is just to do a first preview and make sure that they're getting into the town clerk. The vice chair is responsible for running the meeting in the absence of the chair. It's also a great shadowing opportunity, if you ask my opinion, in terms of usually when the chair has a meeting with a department head or things come up and you need to prep for a meeting, just kind of preview stuff without having to be. There's also times that come up where the chair decides to excuse themselves from a topic for whatever reason, whether it be conflict or otherwise, that would then put the vice chair kind of running point, not only on the meeting, but also that particular topic, should it, proceed to town meeting, et cetera. And then the chair is obviously responsible for running the meeting, setting the direction of the committee, setting, the primary point of contact for the department heads, and also making sure that everything's getting done, essentially, but not necessarily doing everything themselves. Big differentiation. And I think as you heard from me in the prior meeting, I'm certainly looking to offload things that have defaulted back to me, that weren't necessarily with me over the years. So, with that being said, the way we typically do this is, I'm going to take a call for nomination for a chair. We'll vote. We'll then work through that. Then we'll do vice chair, then do clerk, in that successive order. Um, Does anyone have any questions on process of how we're going to do this or the roles?
No.
Okay. Are there any nominations for chair?
Before I make my recommendation, Jason, do you still want the chair role?
I'm still willing to serve as chair, is how I will answer the question, and happy to do it if that's the committee's will. But it's different than just saying anything different than that.
Steve, did you have an interest?
You're on mute, but I just can't.
No, thank you.
Okay. Then I nominate Jason Malinowski for the chair of.
Second.
All right. Motion's been made and second. Is there any further discussion? All right. That requires a roll call vote. So Mike Ski,
Aye.
Mike N,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and I'm abstaining. So that's a 3-0-1 vote. Is there anyone interested or that wants to make a nomination for vice chair?
Go ahead. You're interested or you're like,
I'm in,
was that a,
I'm interested, but Mike, yeah, I think you interested?
I mean, I'm happy to, I'm happy to help, but if you're interested, then I will nominate you. I nominate Mike Ski as vice chair.
Is there a second to that? I see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you, Steve.
Second.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Roll call vote. Mike Ski,
I abstain.
Mike N,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and I am I as well. So that's also a 3-0-1 vote. The next is for clerk. Mike Ski and I get to say we're not interested. So either you willing to just make sure our minutes get in with our commitment that they will not fall on your shoulders.
I can do that
Okay.
yeah.
Then I will nominate Mike N as our clerk. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? Thank you, Mike. All right. Roll call vote. Mike Ski,
Aye.
Mike N.
I'll abstain.
All right. Steve,
Aye.
and I am I as well. All right. So that is another 3-0-1 vote. I appreciate you doing that. My commitment as chair is, if anyone ever is willing or looking to change things up, let's have a discussion and we can add it to an agenda. And otherwise, these roles will come up annually. So we'll do this again in July next year, given we'll have a little more stability, and not open seats, hopefully. And we'll go from there. And there will be naturally some committee or liaison assignments that will come up throughout the year that we'll be looking for some assistance on as well. Okay. With that being said, is there any public comment from our one member of the public that's here? I'm seeing none. Is there any other business that anyone wants to conduct tonight? All right. With that, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion's made and seconded. Roll call vote. Mike Ski,
Aye.
Mike N,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and I am I as well. That's unanimous. Hope everyone has a great night.
Jason, I took light minutes last time, but I lost part of them. I can give you which I have, and I tried my best to take extensive minutes this time. So I'll
The
send
good
over.
news is there's recordings posted, so I'll get you the copies of the recording if you want to look at any of them before, but then circulate them in draft to the committee.
That's what I'll do next. So if you I was looking for the recording on this one, and just yesterday, because I realized how much I had got chopped off. But if you get it to me, I will get them over. So at least that's one less thing you have to worry about.
Thank you.
They're on YouTube.
They're on YouTube.
I'll get you the link.
Okay.
South Road Town on YouTube.
Okay. I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate the site.
All right.
There's
Have a
like
good
a
night,
South.
everyone.
There's a YouTube channel for Southborough
Okay.
open remote meetings, I believe.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
It's not monetized, I don't believe.